Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome to this Learn and Study event to help you learn more about the Eden Proejct Foyle. My name is Claire McGee and I'm part of the executive team for the project alongside my colleagues Barney Toole and Dan James. Guys, if you just want to give everyone a wave. Eden Proejct Foyle is a community project. It's driven by the Foyle River Gardens charity in partnership with the Eden Proejct. It's an ambitious and potentially transformative project which offers multiple benefits in terms of economic development, education and learning, the environment and social inclusion in Derry, Londonderry and the Greater North West region. Shortly, Dan and Barney will provide you all with a short overview presentation of the project, and at the end we will facilitate a questions and answers session. Throughout, please use the chat facility to submit any questions to me and we will answer as many of them as our allocated time allows. Any questions that we don't get around to answering during our 40-minute slot, please send them on to hello@foylerivergardens.com and we will be happy to provide feedback. We hope you enjoy learning about our project, and for now I'm going to pass you over to Barney and Dan. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Claire. I'm just going to share my screen now with everybody. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep, good, thank you. I'm going to just sort of do a very brief introduction to the project. For those of you who are from the city, then you've probably got a fair idea of where the site is. If you're coming across the Foyle Bridge, it's on your right as you're heading over to the city side. For those of you who don't know, this is the River Foyle. Our project extends, this is the Foyle Bridge. It extends from the Foyle Bridge all the way down to as far as you can see on the right hand side of your screen, and indeed further on down our ambitions are to go about another 1.5 miles on down river till we reach Cornwall village. So where did this project come from? Its genesis dates back to 2013 when Claire and I both worked for a different organization called Norwich Business Innovation Centre. And every year, we were part of a 170 strong band of business innovation centres across Europe. And every year they hosted an annual congress where all those centres got together and brought together the great and the good in innovation. We won the opportunity in open competition, I suppose is the way to say it, to host that event in the year of the City of Culture in 2013, which we thought was a very opportune time in which to do it, to showcase Derry at its best. And we decided that we would depart slightly from the normal theme of the congresses by not inundating it with workshops, but by having keynote international speakers there. And you can see some of them in the pictures there. We had Steve Wozniak, who was the co-founder of Apple. We had Richard Florida, who's an American academic, whose thesis is very much based around the strength of the creative industries in economic growth. And we also had Sir Tim Smith, who's the co-founder of the Eden Proejct. So you can see up here, we've got Steve and Sir Tim, myself and Claire. Down the bottom here, the three of us, myself, Claire and Dan, actually at the Eden Proejct last summer when times were better and it was open. But basically coming out of this, a group of community developers and activists got together and said, look, can we take Tim Smith down to Boomhall, the building that you see here. It's a council-owned estate with, as you can see, a derelict 18th century manor house on it. And to see, was there any opportunity in which we could really look at how we could restore or regenerate that, that particular building and the small site around it. But when Sir Tim got down to the site, he saw, this vision on the top left, the River Foyle, the beautiful landscape, and was totally blown away by the fact that this is within a 15-minute walk of the city centre. For the last forever, 400 years, it has not been available to the general public to go through, to walk, to visit, to explore, and to benefit from the environmental delights that are on it. And basically, through the challenge back to us as a community, a series of community people, community activists, to say, well, look, if you can do something, bring this landscape together. Our experience has been as Eden in regenerating and redeveloping landscapes to better their environment and to better their ecology, and to really make them something which is a world-class attraction. And indeed, those of you who have been to either Eden or the Lost Gardens of Heligan will really appreciate what they have done. So I'm delighted that we have got Dan James with us here today, albeit direct from St Austell in Cornwall, as he said earlier. And Dan's going to run through a fairly brief presentation, maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so, on the story of where we've come from with this, where we're at now, and really where we plan to go with this world-class facility, community facility that we are building within the Northwest. So Dan, I'll bring that over to you now and let you take over.
Thank you very much, Barney, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to talk to you from Cornwall. I'm Development Director at Eden, and I've been working there since 2002. And I've been the lead on the Eden Proejct Foyle scheme from the start. So for the last 4 years, I've been coming over to Derry every month to visit the site and to push this project forward. And I'm always really taken by the wonderful warm welcome I get every time I come from the good folk of Derry. You are incredibly kind and generous with your time and your hospitality. And actually what I see when I come to Derry are some interesting parallels to Cornwall in terms of geography and distance from the corridors of power, and the way that we feel that actually if we're going to get things done, then we've got to kind of roll our own sleeves up and get it done, and we shouldn't necessarily rely on help from others. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the two locations. This slide you've got in front of you now is the Eden Proejct in 1998. It's a china clay pit that's come to the end of its economic life in Cornwall. Mining in Cornwall was a pretty big, significant piece of our economy. You Poldark levels will know that actually in the kind of 18th century, Cornwall was one of the richest places in the world, as it exported copper and tin from the west of Cornwall. But in the middle of Cornwall, we had this china clay produce, and around the 70s, particularly in the 70s, there's probably about 5,000 people that worked in the industry and looked after by an incredibly paternal company called English China Clays. And actually over time, with the introduction of mechanization, and then with costs being cheaper in Brazil and China, that industry has eroded to now being less than 1,000 people working in it within the mid-Cornwall area. And these sites, there are a number of them, were kind of really for a long time perceived as being a liability rather than an asset, until Tim came along and he managed to persuade the lottery to invest 56 million in this project, and that money was matched by European money and government money to the same number, and Eden took out debt of around 20 million and invested a significant amount of its own money to achieve this, which is the transformation as we sit here in June. Barney, if you wouldn't mind clicking that on. And that's our site. As you see, it says June 2020, it's clearly July, so 1st of July. But yeah, 500 staff. We were originally predicated to employ 150 staff and maybe attract 650,000 visitors a year. In actual fact, we attract 1 million a year down to Cornwall to visit the Eden Proejct. 21 million visitors have come to date. We have about 50,000 school children who visit the site on a regular basis through formal school visits. And we are now also a formal educational campus affiliated to Plymouth University. So there are 120 students who are delivering or working and doing their degrees on our site. This is their college campus. And that's a kind of interesting thing that we want to explore on the Eden Proejct Foyle site as well. And what Eden has done for Cornwall, as well as just transforming that derelict and sterile place and making a spectacular iconic destination, it has managed to generate a significant economic impact for Cornwall, about £2 billion since it's opened. And that's through visitors coming down and staying overnight and spending in local hotels and local services. And it is that we need to replicate here in Derry for it to be a success. And that is what we're trying to do. So, thank you, Barney. So the opportunity for us really at this moment in time is that we have the chance to restore and enhance around 200 acres of beautiful riverside landscape that has previously been unavailable to the general public. And it links 2 estates and 3 walled gardens. The first estate is the Boomhall estate, which is in the ownership of Derry Council and includes the shell of the ruined Boomhall house itself, the listed walled garden and stable yard. And then adjoining Boomhall is the Brookhall estate, which is in the ownership of the Gilliland family. And in the lands in there, they have an extensive walled garden, which is of a significant size. And we believe that it used to feed the city of Derry pre-siege and has access to the riverbank all the way along its length. And it has amazing icehouse and arboretum within it. And the idea for the partnership really is that the Foyle River Gardens, a charity set up by Barney and Claire and our colleagues and our partners in Northern Ireland, will be the kind of owner of the relationships with the land. They may even own some of that land, and what Eden hope to become the operator of that destination. So 2 charities coming together to deliver this amazing opportunity. Thanks, Barney. This rather interesting slide is really just to say the project is predicated on a business model that has worked in Cornwall, which sees visitors and tourism revenue generating the income that then underpins the work of the charity going forward. So if you look at Eden's business model and you look at what we're trying to do in Foyle River Gardens, we are not seeking to have an ongoing subsidy from Derry Council to make this project work. We want to make it work through a social enterprise model where we're working really hard to drive spend per head on the destination itself. And then that money we generate will then help to deliver a series of outputs around health, well-being, learning, and employment. And that's the kind of model we're desperate to use here. We see this as being a sustainable business model going forward, and we will be really driving that hard through the process. And I think there's an interesting conversation for us about what that means post-COVID. Clearly, with 200 acres of site, that gives you a big opportunity to space people out. And you know, Eden are going through the similar conversations on our site in Cornwall at the moment as to how do we all respond to COVID. And I think a place like Eden Proejct Foyle could do very well as a result of what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Thanks, Barney. So for us, really, the Eden Proejct Foyle has 3 themes that run through it, like a bit like Brighton through rock, really. And you've got the first one being it is a destination. It is an iconic tourism destination for Derry in the northwest of Ireland, and we expect to attract 400,000 visitors a year to the site. And that we hope to not only attract new visitors to Derry, but we also want to extend the length of stay that existing visitors to the city have. So at the moment, you know, anecdotally, we hear that you get a lot of people come in, they visit the walls, and maybe they're out again. And we want to try and keep them here for a longer period of time. So that's the delivery of the destination, Barney. That then we do see this as a community hub. We see this as a space where the residents of Derry just use it on a regular basis. This is almost, we want you to see this as a public amenity almost. So the model we're going to create is one that there will be a locals pass holder rate. So you buy your pass holder and that is your membership for the year, and you are allowed to come in and out of the site as many times as you want throughout the year as a result of that membership. And you know, I know that in Derry you do a lot of good work around social prescribing activity, and at Brook Park do a lot of that work at the moment. We see, you know, coming in and doing social prescribing activity, the opportunity to run a number of cultural events or sporting events or activities. So every time you come and visit, whatever the season, whatever the weather, there is something new for you to see, something interesting to do. And you just keep coming back and coming out, and it becomes a regular part of your daily lives. And then finally, it's an educational facility. So coming back to that idea of the Eden campus in Cornwall, we will deliver education, preschool, formal school visits, apprenticeships, and job taster sessions. I suppose the interesting conversation for me is one about wanting this project to become a global research centre around the themes of ecology, sustainability and environment. And we've been having incredibly positive conversations with Queen's University, Belfast, Ulster University, Letterkenny Institute and Northwest Regional College, those big kind of educational establishments in your area, all of whom are interested in seeing how we use the Eden Proejct site as a showcase and a platform to tell stories about their research and to give the public a greater understanding of the activities that are going on in those institutions, and hopefully build a greater understanding and public engagement in science, really, particularly in light of what we're going to see with the climate change response and the COVID response. And the other bits about it is that we hope that the Eden Proejct Foyle will become part of a wider family of Eden projects. And we have a spade in the ground in delivering an Eden project in Chengdu in China. We've got advanced conversations with one in Australia, and then more closer to home in Morecambe. So they're starting to build up a series of other Eden projects. When you bring them together in a network, you can share ideas and share learning and also share resources. And I think that's quite an interesting and exciting opportunity for Derry to become part of this wider group of organisations. Thank you, Barney. So this is our first, I guess this is the concept master plan. And if, I don't know whether Barney, you or I have got control in terms of just showing where the Boomhall sits versus Brook Hall. So if people can see that, so this the Brook Hall site at the moment is in here, and then the Boomhall site goes all the way down to there. So those are the two areas, and the master plan is inspired by the themes of connection, production, and play. And by connection, we mean developing new forms and relationships between people and the natural world and the city and this landscape. So that the riverside walkway that will run all the way along the bottom of this site, which will be freely accessible to anyone, will connect you back with this landscape and the riverside, and it will then link into the wider greenway that's been created, moving through Bay Road Park and up into the city centre. We want to, through play, we want to create the best playground in Ireland and have journeys that run through this landscape through a range of weaving pathways and floating boardwalks and rope bridges and slides and zip wires. And then finally, production, we want to become a showcase for the future models around best practice in horticulture and agriculture, and allow Northern Ireland to have a central stage in that global debate on the future of food and farming. If I just focus down a little bit more deeply onto the Boomhall site, you can see we've got primarily three built forms on the Boomhall site: the hall, the stables, and a new build around the play space. And the whole story around this is inspired by plant growth. So the Boomhall stables will be the visitor entrance into the site, if you like, and it symbolises germination. And you'll have a series of productive gardens in here that will be supplying the cafe space within the site, and we're looking to showcase the best of Northern Ireland food and drink in here and create artisan studios to allow people to have access to that market of 400,000 people to start to sell their products and just give people a platform around that activity. in here is the Boomhall stables, which we think symbolises rebirth. So this romantic ruined shell of Boomhall will be reimagined, really. So the external fabric of the building will be restored, but actually what we're looking at doing is creating a garden within those ruins, and that internal space will start to allow us to maybe use it for cultural activities and events and functions, and it starts to become, it starts to have a new life for itself. That moves on from what it looks like at the moment. And then finally, this new space here is the play space, which is themed around growth. And the building form itself was inspired by the initial shoots from a seed and the unfurling of a new leaf growth. And we're moving on to the next slide, Barney. The new piece of architectural building on the site, which is the iconic element of it, will be known as the Acorn. And the brief we gave the architects was to see whether they could create a building that reflected the natural environment of the region. And we thought about the oak, so that shape being inspired by the initial shoots of a seed and then the unfurling of a leaf growth. But we also wanted the building to recognise the history of the region and the cross-border nature of Derry. So it has links there to Greenham and to Birchapple. Thanks. And in particular, that this is shown through the roof space that looks at Neolithic architecture and worshipping of the sun. So what you're seeing going around there is there'll be an oculus at the top of the site that will refract the sun to change the light within the building throughout the day. So as the sun moves across the sky, the interior of the building will be illuminated in various ways, whilst you can have access to the roof, and it will allow visitors to experience that landscape and zip wires and everything around it. So that's a kind of interesting piece of architectural design that we're looking forward to shaping up more as we go along. Thanks, Barney. So if I put all those ingredients together, what you get is hopefully what you see is an instantly recognizable building emerging from the trees and visible from the Foyle Bridge. But that structure all becomes part of the play space. So people are able to walk on the roof, they're able to zip wire down from the roof onto the river, and it becomes part of the whole experience. The building will be constructed with timber, thatch and glass. We expect it to be light, energy efficient, carbon efficient, and those curved walkways allowing access to the building and onto its roof, we think mimics the meandering river of the River Foyle as you see it up in the background there going towards the city. That's the context of that site. It wouldn't be the Eden Project if I didn't talk a bit about sustainability and the environment, and clearly the sustainability and the performance of this site will be central to Eden's brand. Oh, apologies. I'm now hearing myself in stereo. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know how. So yeah, so it's important for us. We will set internationally recognized environmental standards around this building, and we will want to test ourselves and set some challenging targets for ourselves. So our plan is that we're going to aim for Eden Project Foyle to be carbon neutral. We are aiming to deliver a biodiversity net gain across the whole site. We want to have zero avoidable waste by taking a circular approach to our resource use on site. And we also want to ensure that Eden Foyle is a place that enhances the health and well-being of the local population, and that it drives our local economy and starts to create prosperity to the area. And Barney, the next one. And just talking to that local prosperity piece, we've had a bit of work done by Grant Thornton Associates that's based on the Eden economic impact assessment work to say, if this project were to happen, what kind of economic impact would it have? And we're going to create around 170 jobs on the site once we're up and running. And we think we can generate a visitor expenditure per annum of about 62 million a year. And that's through people visiting Derry, staying there overnight for a couple of days and spending money in the city. So driving, hospitality spend, taxi drivers, the whole serviced economy. And that's based on on a project that we think at the moment the capital cost is around 70 million. So in that terms of that public return on investment will be paid back within less than 2 years. So that's a really, really quick run through of where we are on the project. And I think it'd be great to have some questions, Claire and Barney, if there are any coming through, and maybe we can pick up some specific points.
Yeah, we have a few questions. I think the first question is, what will be the main topics of learning that you foresee the project providing?
Well, I think that we've covered a lot of those in the presentation. I mean, obviously, the whole project is environmentally based, so the topics that we want to provide learning in are obviously horticulture, ecology. The whole question of climate change is something which is huge at the minute. The whole idea of zero emissions. One of the things that we are already doing is we have a research project with Queen's University and Ulster University looking at sustainable energy on site. So, as Dan said in his presentation, one of our aims is to be zero carbon, on the site, carbon neutral, or maybe even beyond that. And another challenging one for us is to be as off-grid as we possibly can. So we are delighted that we've secured a £250,000 research grant with the two universities to look at that. Obviously, the site itself will be an exemplar of all of these things whenever it's up and running. Dan mentioned biodiversity. Again, the big difference between this site and the Eden site in Cornwall, as you saw from the first picture, is that the Eden site in Cornwall was a disused industrial site. Ours is the exact opposite of that. It is an incredibly beautiful site. And while we talk about development, the development that we're doing on it is very, very small. One new building on site, the rest will be restored as far as we can. But the general landscape itself, we believe it'll be regenerated. And the whole topics of learning about horticulture, about recycling, about biodiversity, are all things that people will learn, are the main topics that we'll learn, not in a straightforward way by attending class, but just by being there and discovering. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is play and discovery. So everything that we're going to talk about in terms of learning to a large extent is in that. There will be other training opportunities, of course. I mean, Dan mentioned Eden and Cornwall as a university campus, and they provide higher level education, degree level in tourism and event management and in catering. And we would like to think that we could be doing some of those with the added advantage that anybody who's working or a student on site or a student in a local college will be able to have work experience and project experience on site. So it's very much learning by doing is really what we're doing. And we feel it ties in a lot with the whole UNESCO Learning Cities. It's lifelong learning.
Okay, thanks, Barney. And there's been a few questions, repetitive questions, kind of asking the same thing. What's the timescale of the project? When will we be ready and open for business? And what's the response been to the project by the respective governments? So maybe Dan.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to take that. We've always said that we'd love to be on site in 2023. Clearly, what's going on at the moment with COVID is making that a slightly challenging time frame. But I think when I say on site, what I mean by that is I think there is an opportunity to bring people to the site and access the site whilst the construction is ongoing. So I don't see this as being something that we have to wait around for too long. So I'd love to, if we could create the Riverside walkway, for example, to give access to the whole site, you could then start to come on site and see the project develop in front of your eyes, which is a thing we did at Eden as well. We called it the Big Build, and over 500,000 people came and watched Eden being constructed. And I think that generates a sense of excitement and awe and wonder when you start to see the project coming on. So I think that will be our intention. I mean, the conversations we've had with Derry Council and the governments both in the north and the south have been incredibly positive. Some of you might remember the announcement of the new decade new approach document. This project was named within that document as one that could help with the transformation of the Northwest, both in terms of it as an economic point of view and around sustainability. So the government in the south have been very supportive, and recently we've had a piece of work done by the Strategic Investment Board to look at high-level options appraisal around this project on behalf of our colleagues within Derry Council and in Stormont, and that work has just finished. It's incredibly positive, and those conversations are ongoing. But you know, I have to say, to be fair, that both Stormont and Derry Council have had quite a bit on their plate over the last 3 months, and you know, it now feels like the right time, and we're starting to see people think about the future post-COVID, and I expect those conversations to carry on over the next 6 months, and we're at a critical stage. I think we do need some additional money now to carry out some more technical work on the site. We want to understand the environment a bit more. We want to understand the kind of flora and fauna and wildlife that exists on that site, so that we can create measures that ensure that those animals and those plants and those existing structures flourish on the site going forward. So we're moving into a really critical phase, but all the mood music from those key partners has been very positive.
That just leads into another question from a representative from the Northwest Squirrel Group, where they have surveyed the area at Boomhall and around Foyle Hospice, and there are red squirrels in the area, which we know about. They are concerned about any development and how that might impact the squirrels there and other wildlife. What plans are in place to protect the red squirrels?
Well, I think we will want to protect the red squirrels. I mean, we haven't got a specific plan in place yet, but it certainly wouldn't be in the brand values and of the Eden Project to have a detrimental impact on any wildlife or any flora and fauna that is currently on that site. So we will have to get into a technical conversation around some of that activity, and we will come up with mitigation measures to ensure that the red squirrels or any other bits of wildlife are not adversely impacted by what we do.
Yeah,
I think it's useful just to add to that, you know, as I hinted at, that we're really looking at regenerating the landscape and enhancing it, you know, for the benefit of both people, animals, and plant life on it. So the development will be minimal. And yes, we have seen the red squirrels down there, and we know that they're currently under threat from the greys. And we would love to be able to have a red squirrel habitat down there, so it could become a centre for red squirrels, and you know, help that population grow. So it is one of the things that we will definitely be looking at. Dan mentioned additional funding there. I mean, one of the things we know is that even just to get through planning, we have to commission 17 studies looking largely at environmental impacts and ecological impacts, and we want to make sure that this project goes through having been extremely diligent in all those areas, because as Dan has said, Eden Project is very much based around the ecology and the environment of the area, you know, and you know, that is what is underpinning an awful lot of what we do.
Which again leads into the next question, which is, how does the project support the green agenda?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to say that. I mean, hopefully I talked a bit about it in the conversation. So our aspiration for this project it will be carbon neutral, and that everything we do on that site, we want it to have a net gain around that. So it's an important part of the project. The environment will run through it. It will be an essential part of its DNA, whether we're talking about local sourcing, whether we're talking about how we manage our waste, how we manage plastics, how we manage our transport, vehicles coming in, coming out. We're looking at ways in which we might use the water to bring people to site, how we manage our energy. We're doing a piece of work with Queen's University in Ulster at the moment about looking at how we can drive this site with renewable energy sources. So every single facet of the project will be looked at with a lens of making a positive contribution to the environment. And I would love Eden Proejct Forward to be a central plank of Derry's response to the climate emergency as well. I think that could be a really important part of that conversation.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, we've time for one more question, and that is there's that many kind of coming on now at the minute. Whatever questions we can't answer now due to time, because we're due to finish at 16:40 as there's another event starting. If you send those directly to hello@foylrivergardens.com, and I'll put that into the chat facility. If you send those questions on, we'll be happy to give responses to those. The final question is, what links and associated regenerations will there be to the existing open landscapes in the waterside area? Example, St. Colum's Park and Grantia Park.
Yeah, okay. We've already had lots of discussions with the council about their existing green areas. We are very well aware that there's a big push to get the Greenway extended out to Strathfoyle. Dan mentioned wall gardens. On our site there are 3 wall gardens, but there are also, we've been discussing links with the wall gardens that are in St. Colum's Park. There's a wall garden just across the road from the site at the Church of Ireland Bishop's Palace, and Brook Park itself could be considered as a large wall garden, and we're looking at how we can promote a wall garden trail within that. In terms of Grantia, yes, we have a great interest in perhaps further down the line the Eden Proejct Foyle being on both sides of the river, because we see that there's a big opportunity there. There's a similar habitat on that side of the river. It's currently in public ownership, but not really used. And we have begun early discussions with the Health Trust to see, is there an opportunity that we can utilize that part of the land further down the line. Again, one of the things that we perhaps haven't touched upon is the whole health and well-being side of what we're trying to do, and there's a huge amount of research about physical and mental health well-being by people being more in tune with the environment and the landscapes, and we see very much that as a driver of what we do. We do want the project to be for the Northwest. It's not simply the little piece of land that we have, little piece, 200 acres of land that we're looking at now. And yes, we want to see that potentially, link up with all the other sites. And indeed, we know that there's a greenway project between Derry and Donegal. We see this project as being a very strong part of that link between the Foyle Bridge and Cornwall Point. We see a lot of the benefits and the impacts and what we're doing being on a cross-border basis, particularly in Donegal. And we quite often, when we're talking to the tourism authorities on both sides of the river, both sides of the border, sorry, we say, well, look, Derry and Eden Proejct Foyle is right at the fulcrum between the Wild Atlantic Way and the Causeway Coast Trail. So we're very open to have lots of linkages across there.
Okay, thank you. And again, thanks to everyone for attending the session. 40 minutes doesn't belong in flying in.
Can I just do one minute overtime on this? Project Pollinate is a project that is working with the Eco Attractions Group. And if anybody is interested in looking at how they can build a pollinator palace or a bug hotel if they contact info@ecoattractions.com after the 4th of July, there'll be a launch of that project. And Eden Proejct Foyle and Eden Proejct are a member of the Eco Attractions group. So there's a little call to action for everybody.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to reiterate, if you would like to find out any more information about the project, or if you're interested in a site visit at some time, and we do a lot of those, especially over the summer months, please get in touch with us at hello@foylerivergardens.com, and I've put the email address and the chat facility here. And I'm sure that the hosts at Derry City Council have our contact details if anyone wants to get in touch. So thank you all for your time today, and hopefully see you at Eden Proejct Foyle in the not too distant future. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.